world-renowned sports teams, a modern walkable city, and some suburbs with top-notch school districts. Well, these are just some of the amazing reasons why people love Kansas City and why some people actually move here. But what if these visions of grandeur just become a scary reality when you move here? Well, imagine the shock when finally moving to Kansas City only to find that some of these things are more of a scary reality than what you wanted to happen. In today's video, I'm going to be sharing some of the things about Kansas City that a lot of times people don't talk about and quite frankly are the unadulterated ugly. We're going to be talking about some of the things that people in my industry don't always share. So before you pack your bags and before you head this way to Kansas City and accept that job offer, you're going to want to watch this video. If we've never met before, my name is Anita Cordell, and I do videos about Kansas City, what it's like to live here, what it's like to work here, what it's like to play here, what we do on the weekends, and we're going to talk about the weather in this video as well. I'm also a licensed real estate agent and a team lead of the Yellow Brick Group, and I help people just like you buy, sell, relocate, and invest right here in our amazing city. Why? Because there's no place like home. Now I want to make a personal invitation to you that in the comments section below, I would love for you to go ahead and feel free to write anything into the comment section. Things that you love about Kansas City, things that you don't love about Kansas City, go ahead and put that in the comment section below, because when people are watching these videos, people love reading the comments and it actually helps the viewers, and it also boosts this video as well for people to see the content of these videos as well. Also, I do not have a personal assistant reading my comments, so keep in mind about that. But if there is something that you would like for me to do about Kansas City, be sure and comment below. Also in the description below is my contact information, including a calendar link. It goes right to my calendar and we can set up a video conference call and learn more about your real estate goals. So as I talk about some of these things, just remember that I'm being honest with you about some of the things that the clients who I have helped have shared with me. So the first regret is about the DNA of Kansas City. Now what I mean by that is that if you go to New York City, or if you go to like Chicago area, or if you go to some areas maybe in California or Las Vegas, there's a certain DNA when it comes to travelers about those cities. Kansas City is not one of those. In those certain areas, there's travelers there. It's kind of like their DNA, but Kansas City is not a traveler's city. Now, are there people who travel? Yes, they go on vacations, they go with their families. Obviously, we have professionals who travel with their jobs. And not only that, but Kansas City has just renovated the Kansas City International Airport. And so the traveling community has grown. Comparably speaking, Kansas City has minimal travelers. And so the DNA of Kansas City and people who are constantly going out of town, it's just not there. And so if you're used to that, you might be a little disappointed that the community of travelers is not as big as other cities and what the DNA is around that area. So keeping that in mind, if you are a traveler, if you are an explorer, or if you are somebody who loves being around people who travel a lot, you might have a difficult time here in Kansas City unless you are able to connect with some young professionals or people who travel a lot with their work. Just keep that in mind when you are looking to move here to Kansas City. The second regret that people have when they move to Kansas City is the fact that they are not prepared for the change of seasons. And what I mean by that is that Kansas City absolutely has 4 seasons. Now, I just helped a client move from Atlanta to Kansas City, and when they came here to Kansas City, it was in the dead of winter, and the family did not even own any coats. They had to buy coats when they were in Atlanta, buy them, bring them here, and so all of the family, the 3 kids, as well as the husband and wife, they didn't even have coats, and so they all had these brand new coats when we were out looking at properties. And in fact, when we were out looking at properties, there had just been a snow snowfall, and there was slush on the driveways, and they experienced me actually getting stuck on one of the driveways that we were at. And so the homeowner had to come out and get their cat litter and pour cat litter on the driveway so that I could get out of the driveway. So they were actually able to learn what happens when you get stuck in a driveway here in Kansas City when there's slush or a little bit of ice. So it was kind of comical and fun, but they were not prepared for what happens when it snows and what have you. And so that's one of the things that I hear about when people move into Kansas City, is they're not fully prepared for the season. On the flip side, when it comes to summer, it does get really hot. I will say this, that I have family who live in Dallas, and Dallas actually is really hot, comparably speaking, to Kansas City. And in fact, they came into Kansas City in the summertime. It was a July 4th weekend. They were pleasantly surprised because in Dallas it gets so hot that when they were in the hot seasons in Kansas City, they were feeling a little bit cool. So depending on where you come from, you may or may not regret the heat. Another thing that people regret not fully being prepared for are the tornadoes. I've lived here most of my growing up age and most of my adult life, and I have never seen a tornado. Have I been in tornado storms? Yes. I have also been in tornado storms where the warnings go off and the sirens go off, and you've got to go down into your basement and make sure that you have safety protocols set in place. And I have been in very scary storms, but I've never seen a tornado, and I've never actually experienced my property being damaged. I do have friends who were in very strong tornado storms. One friend years ago lost their home. They made it down to the basement just in the nick of time for a tornado to come through. I don't know if you've heard about the tornadoes years ago in Joplin, Missouri. They were actually one of the people who lost their homes in that tornado. But when it comes to tornadoes, yes, there are some that come through Kansas City. I've never personally seen one, but I have experienced bad storms. So one of the regrets, obviously, is that some people are not prepared for the weather that the Midwest has, whether that be snow, the heat, or tornadoes. I will say this though, that my favorite season is the fall. I love the fall in the Midwest. The leaves turning are beautiful. The scent of winter coming is beautiful. I love wearing fall clothes, sweaters, jackets, coats. It's all fun. That's my favorite season. So I don't have a problem with the fall, and I just love the way that the seasons change and the wind comes. It just is so beautiful to me and something that I personally love. If you are getting value out of today's video, be sure and click the subscribe button, as well as click the bell so that you can be the first to learn when I post something new. And if you know of somebody who is considering moving to the Kansas City area, be their hero and share this video. Now, the third reason why people regret moving to the Kansas City area has to do with singlehood and family life. Now, Kansas City is known for being a family city. There are a lot of family-oriented activities, children's activities, a lot of wholesome activities going on. And so if you are a single young adult or in your 40s or 50s or whatever, some people have a really difficult time with finding companions or finding a community when it comes to being single. Now, I personally don't go out and party. I don't go out to the Power and Light District, and I don't connect with partiers per se. But if you are a young adult and you like to party, then there are some things that you can do, some places that you can go. But if you are a single person in Kansas City and you don't like to party, you really have to be intentional about looking for a church that's got a young adult or a singles community. There's singles Facebook groups regarding Kansas City. I personally have stalked them just so that I have some valid points to talk about on this video. And when I stalked them, I noticed that there were a lot of people that would introduce themselves and say, you know, hey, I'm single and I'm 50 years old and I'm really looking for a mate, blah, 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 blah. I personally don't get into that kind of stuff. If I were single, I would just not get into that kind of introduction. I think that it goes to say that, you know, Kansas City is a very family-oriented city. We have a lot of churches as well. And so you really have to be intentional, keeping in mind that I have received feedback that if you are single, it's just really difficult to find a community or a companion. So the fourth regret that people have about living in Kansas City or moving here deals with the limited public transportation. Now, if you live in the downtown area, I have done a whole video about why you would love living in downtown Kansas City, and one of the reasons is because of the public transportation. However, if you live outside of downtown, or if you are not living near one of the bus routes or near one of the streetcar routes, it's going to be a challenge to you. You'll want to be very intentional about where you live, especially if you are needing to ride the public transportation or if you are needing to ride the bus to work or what have you. That is just one of the regrets that people have when they're moving here, is just limited public transportation here in the overall Kansas City metropolitan area. Kansas City as a whole, though, does have the Kansas City streetcar. You can rent bikes, you can rent scooters, and ride some of the public transportation. But just keep in mind, if you are coming to Kansas City and you absolutely have to have public transportation, you need to be intentional about where you live. The fifth regret on the list of why people regret moving to Kansas City has to do with the sports. Kansas City is a huge sports town, and I'm not gonna lie, if you do not like sports, you possibly will get really annoyed by it. We've got the Royals, we've got the Chiefs, we've got the Mavericks, NASCAR Speedway, we've got Sporting KC, which is soccer, and by the way, Overland Park is named as the soccer capital of America. We've also got softball, baseball, all kinds of recreational sports. So if you are not into sports or your family is not into sports, you're going to get annoyed with the whole entire city lighting up. The lights go on, the downtown lights up, the Power and Light District has a lot of celebrations. There's vendors on the sides of the streets selling all kinds of sports gear, and you will also be annoyed with the Swifties fan clubs. The sixth regret that people have when they move to Kansas City has to do with all of the development. And when I'm talking about that, I'm not talking about certain pockets of the city that's got some really neat developmental plans in place, like business growing and things like that. I'm talking about the apartment development. I hear a lot about how that when people move here, they really want to get into pockets of the city where there's new construction, where they can live with neighborhoods, and purchasing a property in a certain city where they have a community and can be around other home buyers. However, I hear quite frequently how that people will buy into a city and then all of a sudden the city development plan is to build huge apartment complexes. And so one of the regrets about that is that the apartment complexes are growing. It's starting to irritate a lot of Kansas Cityans. So if you are planning to move here to Kansas City, especially if you are wanting to buy a home, make sure that you look at the specific city and the developmental plans within that city so that you know what you are buying and where you're buying, and you know the future plans of that city. Now, obviously, the population of Kansas City is growing. Right now, we are around 2.3 million people. We're certainly not a Dallas, we're certainly not in Atlanta, we're certainly not a New York or Las Vegas, some of those larger cities. But we are growing, and obviously the housing plans, as our city grows, there's going to have to be housing for people. And so that's one of the reasons why apartment complexes are on the rise. However, it is making people frustrated. Now, as any city, paradise, wherever that is at, has its challenges. And these are the 6 regrets that I hear most often when people are moving to Kansas City or wanting to buy a home in Kansas City. So before you make a decision, please feel free to reach out. My contact information again is in the description below, including a calendar link that you can go on and set up a convenient time for you so that we can talk about some of your real estate goals. As always, go out and live your best Kansas City life.